Welcome to That's a Hard No, the podcast about learning to say no and set boundaries to live our best lives. I'm your host, Heather Drago. You may think, because of this podcast, that I'm a boundary setting expert, but I'm not. I'm an expert at struggling to set boundaries. But you know what? I'm working on it, and it is getting easier. Follow along with me as I learn from fellow strugglers and experts so that you too can start saying no without feeling fear, guilt, or FOMO.
You don't know where to go. Unfriendly applications got you feeling low. You're not sure what to do. Weight of expectations is coming down on you. There's a phrase you should know. Tastes so much sweeter than hello. That's a hard no.
Growing up is hard to do. Duh, I hear you saying. But it's something that never gets easier, and the boundaries we need to set in one stage of life, we need to reaffirm at every stage that comes after. You need to be able to say how you feel on the playground in third grade, to stick up for yourself in your first relationship, in your workplace, in marriage. The list goes on and on. Something that we always need to set those boundaries around is our finances. We've talked about it plenty of times on this podcast, and that's because it's important. Your financial health creeps into all the aspects of your life, your relationships, your work-life balance, your mental and emotional health. And all of those parts of our life are important, but there's not exactly a financial therapist in my healthcare network. Where do we learn these important lessons to empower ourselves financially? How do we get ahead no matter what income level we're at? Jim Elios, our guest today, has made it his life's work to help people get on top of their financial health and build the future they're looking for. As the CEO of Elios Financial Group, he is a wealth advisor who specializes in comprehensive financial planning and investment management. Their goal is to build long-term relationships by helping their clients envision their dreams and by enlightening them to make informed financial decisions through education and service, which ultimately enriches their lives. You and I have kind of chatted a little bit about how our kids are kind of in similar ages, and I'm dealing with a kid leaving college, and you've got a couple going into college, and so talking about how to help our kids have a better mindset about money and
Right.
saving, and also how we can be doing a better job. So I just thought it would be a great transition to have you on here to talk about money and boundaries.
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations on this podcast. I
Oh,
did get a
thanks.
chance to listen to a few, and you've got a lot of great guests. And the whole idea of boundaries, it's so applicable to money
Oh, yeah.
and kids. It's boundaries. I mean, if you're, I view myself as a dad first, and certainly a financial advisor to a lot of people, and it is about setting boundaries. So I know your subjects have been so diverse, your guests, but when it comes to money, there's a lot of parallels between parenting, setting boundaries, and financial boundaries. And really, it's all about setting the goals, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
you want to...
What is the vision? What is your why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What is the why?
Yeah.
So setting boundaries with money and college, and it is so expensive. I don't have to tell you how expensive college is.
Yeah.
I've had the difficult conversation with one of my daughters who is, summa cum laude, entering biomedical engineering.
Wow.
And she could have done it for half the cost and half the distance, but the value. It's not about the price. It's about the value. I told her, what are you getting? It's the value proposition. What are you getting for the cost? So there's some intangibles though with kids and money that I had to overcome. She got accepted at a lot of really nice schools that actually paid her scholarships, yet she's choosing the one that's the most expensive with very little scholarship. So there's some behavioral finance stuff there too we could talk about.
Yeah,
but
yeah. We had a sort of a similar deal at our house. So.
yeah.
So I want to talk about like three different phases of life, kind of like when we're early adults, because there are a lot of people from a lot of different age ranges who listen to this podcast. So there's some people in their 20s, right? So let's talk about that stage of life, early adulthood, parenthood. Then when your kids are, starting to think, when you're thinking about preparing for college, as your kids are getting older. And then this comes to my mind because of, all the junk mail I get at my house from my recent college graduate saying, start your credit history
Oh my
now,
gosh,
get
we were
this
just talking about that.
30%
Just
credit
talking
card.
about that, yeah.
So I want to talk
16-year-olds are getting
Yeah, it's
credit
nuts.
card applications.
So I
They
kinda
don't
wanna
even know how to drive yet. And
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I just kind of talk about these three phases. So let's talk about that early adulthood, early parenthood. How do we start out as parents and as young adults setting healthy boundaries around money? I know that's a kind of a big open-ended thing, but however you want to answer it.
It is, but it's a great way. It's a good entree to the whole subject of raising kids and teaching the value of money and the value of work. So I'll just relate it to how I was raised and the principles of money that I learned from my kids. And it really comes down to two phases. And this is applicable to a lot of people view of money. You either come from a place of scarcity or abundance. And that applies to a lot of phases of life. But, my parents struggled with money and they chased the American dream, as Greek immigrants. And, so there's a little bit of a chapter in the book that I'm writing about money and backgrounds, but it was, there was a lot of no in my house because they had 4 kids. My dad struggled, worked, 50, 60 hours, eventually became successful and there was a little bit more resources, but they came from a lot of scarcity. So it was a lot of no, no, no. And so I felt there's got to be a better way. So as I became old enough to make my own money, the paper route at age 12, working in the mall, working fast food, I'm like, I want to have my own money because it was empowering to me, even as a young person. And I always give the example of my parents shopped at Sears. I don't know if I remember Sears. It was a department store where you can get craftsman tools and kids' clothes. My parents wanted to, you're going to wear Sears Toughskins, I remember they were called.
boy.
Do you remember
Yes.
those?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
so glad that you can you remember that reference. You're going to wear Toughskins. And you're like, Mom, none of the cool
How am I going to fit in school?
Yeah,
Everyone's going to make fun
I'm
of me.
in 6th grade.
Yeah.
How am I going to go to school? I want to wear Levi's. And it was a status thing. It's gotten much worse now with social media and all the status and the influencers and celebrities. But back then, the FOMO. Yeah, and you talk a lot about that in this podcast, FOMO. But so I wanted to work to have my own money so I can buy the Levi's. And I sort of earned some respect with my mom and dad saying, okay, if you want to work and you want to spend that little extra, you can. And that agreement worked really, really well. I wanted to get a nice bike. And my dad said, well, if you can come up with half of it, I'll pay the other half. And that seemed to be fair. And now I also relate that to parents saving for kids in their college. How about some skin in the game? And it's hard to say that when, I'm fortunate because I've been able to save for all their college. But how do I teach them the real value of that when they don't have skin in the game? So there's got to be a way of talking about raising your kids to with abundance, but have some scarcity to see the value of things and to create their own goals with their money. I don't know if that's too broad. We can get more specifics. I've worked a lot and saved a lot, and I'm trying to teach the same thing to my kids.
Yeah. I'm guessing those Levi's were more precious to you when you knew you earned them, right? I mean,
that's precisely it.
Yeah, right?
So what do you call that? You call that skin in the game. You call that you see true value when you have to work for it. And that applies to life, right?
Yeah.
So teaching kids about the value of money, the value of work, and the real price tag of things. And it's hard. I have a young intern now that went to a really nice school, but really did the family had less resources, and I can see that he is borrowing money for college and has a different outlook, and I think appreciates it a little bit more than, oh, here, pick your school and
Yeah.
mom and dad are going to pay for it. So skin in the game, seeing not the price but the true
Yeah.
value of it, and
So,
you know,
you know where I live, and we kind of live in neighboring communities.
yeah,
It's a
it's
very
nice.
upper middle
You
class
bet.
suburb.
Yeah.
And so it is a complete 180 from how I grew up.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm
Right.
raising my kids in this very wealthy community, and I would go drive my Ford Escort station wagon to pick them up from high school. And there would be kids in front of me driving BMWs and Land Rovers and these really expensive things. And so my kids grew up with parents who were very frugal, who, even though we were doing fine, we're
Yep.
putting money away, we're saving money, we're not spending a lot of money on expensive cars, and we're not giving them the latest phones, we're not giving them their own car. And it was a little, I mean, I feel like they got it, but there were times when there was that, well, so and so has this, or I went to so and so's house and they
Absolutely.
have
The
that.
resentment.
And I
the
remembered
j-
this phrase I heard. It's an old phrase that says the only time you should be looking in someone else's rice bowl is to make sure they have enough.
Yeah.
And so,
true.
you
That's a
know,
good
and
one.
and I would tell them that, and which, teenager looks at you and is just like, great, mom, thanks. And they know the stories about how I grew up and how, if you think this is poor, this is not poor, But it's hard. It's hard for kids to grow up nowadays, understand the true value of the cost of things and how much work it takes to earn things when they just see the Kardashians and they see all these influencers
Yeah.
and they see all this stuff. And everyone thinks they need to have the same lips, hair, cheekbones, and fashion in order to have a good life. And I guess, how do we teach ourselves, how do we teach kids what that true value is? I
Right.
think you partly answered it in
Yeah.
the
The
having
thing
a
is,
skin in the game.
there's something to be said for part-time jobs and just working. And so I have an example of two. I have twins, and they're beautiful and both smart and talented. One seems to be a little bit more outgoing and social, and she's got a few part-time jobs, and she now has the mindset of making money and maybe saving it, or just true value. The other one was a study nerd. She's never had a job in her life. So I'm just saying, I feel like the one that has some part-time jobs, what's your value in this economy? What's your true value? You've got to find that out. You got to find your talent first. You got to find out what you're good at and what you can offer to this world. Because if it's been provided to you, I guess we're talking around the point. We don't want spoiled kids, right? We don't want kids that are spoiled. How do you prevent that? I'm saying any little job that you can develop your talents and skills, that someone sees value in it. Not the parents, someone else. And the paper route that I had, I love, the paper route to me was one of the best jobs of all time. I think I learned more about business and people.
My husband was a paper
when I
boy
was,
too.
there's
Cleveland Press, remember that?
that was me, Cleveland Press.
yeah.
I loved being a newspaper boy because you think about that. I think a lot of successful people go back to their paper route because you were an entrepreneur at 12 or 13 because they dropped off a big stack of papers. You actually had to pay for those papers up front. You bought it at wholesale. Then you had a route. You delivered it. Mrs. Jones wanted it under the porch. Mr. Jones wanted it in between his door. Mrs. Smith wanted it wrapped in wrapped in paper, just in case it rained. So then at the end of the week, you delivered it successfully. You met all of their needs, and then you had to collect the money. And if you did a good job, you collected the money at retail price. You bought it at wholesale, sold it to them retail, and then you got a tip if you did a good job. That's customer service, that's finance, that's operations. Learned a lot from that. I want kids to do that again.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now they're so busy with they're overbooked too. That's a whole nother
Oh
podcast.
yeah, I've talked
With
about that
activities.
too.
She's overbooked with, cross country and track and choir and piano and, you know, there's a time to, time to reflect and a time to maybe
Yeah.
earn some money and see your true value.
It's so funny. You're touching on a couple of things we've talked about before, in that
Okay.
one is the whole overbooking our kids. Like, I think as an artist and as a business person, I know that boredom breeds creativity, and we give our kids no space to have any blank time. You need to have some blank time where your mind wanders, right? And I do agree that I think kids are overscheduled, overprogrammed, but I think there's this race that parents, and this pressure parents put on kids to achieve, so that they can get into the good school, to build their
Yes.
portfolio and their
Oh,
resume and all
yes.
that stuff. And then the other thing, as we talk about a lot on this podcast, is that there's a lot of mental health problems that come up when people equate their personal value as a human being with how much money they make or what they contribute to the GDP. So I want to be careful
Yeah,
when we
that's
talk
right.
about that,
That's right.
our value as humans is not really tied to how much money we earn.
Yeah.
But if you want to have the life you want to have, whatever your why is, you do need to be smart about
It's
how you spend and how
Yeah.
you save.
The savings part is so empowering, though. Once you have some reserves, it does allow for more creativity. It really does. When you have a cushion and you have some resources, you're not, spending every last dollar and looking for the next. It is absolutely empowering to the peace of mind that it allows you to have. So the act of saving is so beneficial in so many ways. It psychologically allows you to dream and to the creativity, knowing that you have something that you saved. So there's infinite ways to spend and just a finite ways to finite resources for infinite wants and needs. So maybe you've crossed that path with other guests about the wants and the needs, but taking care of some of the basics of, what do I really need? What's really going to give me happiness? And what is a lasting happiness? Not the latest shoes or jewelry or tech and phone and all that. That's so fleeting. It takes some maturity to get to that point. How do you teach that? I'm still trying to teach it with my kids. And for me, having my own money and being able to earn it just let me be more creativity, take more chances and risks, and see the true value of what really makes me happy. It's not the having all the things, it's just having the reserves, knowing that I have choices in life, and
Yeah.
that's having options, and that's super empowering psychologically.
Yeah.
And there's, a lot of books have been written about financial, behavioral finance, the blending of money and how we make decisions. Behavioral finance, it's a fascinating area of finance and psychology. It's really the blend of psych and money and finance. But, we don't make decisions about money in a vacuum. We're not algorithms. We're not robots. We make them as emotional beings.
Yeah.
And you got to reconcile being smart with the money and reconciling what your human needs are.
Yeah.
So, stripping all that away, teaching kids the value of money, how to make it, how to earn it, your talent in this world, finding that true value and what really gives you happiness inside. It takes a while. Every day I try to foster that
Yeah.
in the kids.
So would you say just teaching by example is part of it, and teaching, do you think allowances are good, giving kids money for doing chores? Like, what are some of the tools? And the other thing,
That's a great question.
the other
It's-
thing,
yeah.
like with the kids, but also I'm thinking about, as you're talking, I'm remembering the early years of our marriage when we had our first little starter home and it was falling apart,
Yeah.
and we were raising kids. We didn't have much money to save. Like, it was hard. We
It
didn't
sure
really
was.
put stuff
Me
away
too.
in the
Me
college
too. I
fund
start
for
from
a while.
yeah.
So, like, I guess let's get into some practicalities.
Yeah.
What are some practical ways to teach kids about money, and what are some practical ways as young adults for us to start saving and building that
Yeah, there's
cushion?
two schools of thought on like paying an allowance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So before that, I think kids have to help around the house, and it's just, I mean, whether it's one, two, or three kids, there's chores, and maybe this is old school or old fashioned, but everyone gets an assignment, you know.
Yeah, that's how it was
And
at our house. We
yeah,
were like, that's your rent.
it is. It is your rent, and it's going to turn into rent at 18 if it's not going the way I think it should. No, the chores, just the responsibility of it. A household's like a business. It's you're the COO, COO and CEO, and that's the staff, and things have to be run. I truly believe in the chores, and then after that, a little bit of compensation for it. What's the real value of it? So allowances, fits and starts. I started allowance and then I eliminate it and then I started it back. But this is true story, is that I had to do an audit of one of my teenagers on the money. And of course, I opened up accounts for them, all their birthday money, saving all of it, birthday money. And then, it was a wonderful time to just open up an account, go to the bank with them and all that. But finally, I did some audit of expenses, and I saw the coffee budget on the one was astronomical. And so pulled the report. Data doesn't lie. We don't make decisions without data. Here's the data. Here's your allowance. Here's what you spent on coffee and Starbucks. It was a revelation, and I think she understood that's not going to continue. So that allowance may be eliminated or decreased based on future spending habits, and it's just getting a mindset, and kids have to get that all in perspective.
That's interesting that you were showing her the numbers, though. I think a lot of adults avoid the numbers, and I'm gonna tell my personal story
Yeah,
that
I'd love
relates
to
to
hear-
that
yeah.
when we come back. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back with Jimmy Elios. That's a Hard No is brought to you by Clever Girl Marketing, my full-service agency specializing in smart, strategic marketing solutions for businesses and nonprofits. Okay, so you're probably wondering, Heather, what's with the podcast about boundaries? Why not marketing? Well, maybe in the future, but for now, it actually does relate, so bear with me here. Smart marketing, strategic marketing, requires knowing what to say no to and why. Businesses and nonprofits get inundated with marketing options and offers every day. We help you cut through all that noise, focus on your specific needs, and develop actionable strategies that are doable and actually make sense. Whether it's websites, SEO, email, social, or traditional channels, we're experienced in all of it. So if you need help figuring out your marketing, visit our website, clevergrowmarketing.com, and get in touch. In the second half of our conversation, we get practical. We talk about how to go about saving, and we talk more about sort of the struggles, understanding needs and wants, and we also learn how Jim really feels about tattoos. I grew up in a household where it was a scarcity situation.
Yeah,
My money
scarcity, yeah.
struggled. My mother
Yeah.
struggled. She worked 3 jobs. I mean, it was, the joke was we'd be window shopping, and my mom would say, "Well, that's a nice dress," and I would, 4 years old, I'd be like, "You can't afford that." So but I was always afraid of money and avoiding money, and so now as a business owner, 7, 8 years in, I get a business coach, and she's helping me look at the numbers. And there's literally a conversation where she said, "Heather, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. You're afraid to look at money.
Yes.
You got to get
that's-
familiar. You can't avoid it. You have to look at it."
it's a
And I literally, this is so embarrassing. I think I've said this once on the podcast, but if not, okay. So I have multiple desks in my office, different workstations, right? And for years, all the financial file folders were in the desk I don't sit at. I was like, someone else will
On
take care of
purpose.
that. I
Purposefully
didn't even
like that.
think about it. I
Right.
just thought my assistant will do that, right? And then once I had this revelation with my coach, I was like, well, this is silly. I'm the one who should be touching all the money stuff. And I literally had to spend a day and reorganize my whole office and be like, those are my files. I'm the one who looks at the money. And since then, I feel less stressed about money. I feel less panicky. I may not have as much money in the bank as I would like, but I don't feel stressed about it because I know what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think you have to know, where are you spending your money? How much are you saving? You have to look
It's
at
gotten
it.
a lot easier now with technology and
Yeah.
the data and
Yeah.
you can see everything on your phone. So when you are advising, so I'm advising my child not to spend so much money on their coffee. Well, I don't spend that much. Well, that's not data. The feeling is not data. Actually seeing the reports and confronting it. And I understand your phobia with the money because of a scarcity mentality. It's like you were afraid of it. There was never enough. It was always infinite.
So I had to
Places
learn new
so you had
habits.
to learn.
Yeah.
So everyone should try to learn that. But getting over the phobia, you can't make good decisions as a business owner without knowing the data and seeing the money. And it will reduce your anxiety for it. People have anxiety and they come into my office anxious about money. And I try to break the ice and I have a little funny thing I tell them. It's like, congratulations for coming in. The couple comes in, first time we're meeting, we're going to have a meeting about money. And hey, congratulations, this is going to be great. It's going to be a combination of going to the dentist, a bad math class, and marriage counseling all at once. And then we laugh at it. And it's always the opposite. We try to make it a positive, fun discussion where we can. We have to look at the data, and we have to look at this together and say, this is where we're at. This is where we want to get. What's it going to take? And it's, connecting the dots. That's what money is. We have a goal. We're going to have to make a couple sacrifices to get it. We're going to do it, and we're going to get to that goal. And that's how I saved all the college money. This is what a really good education is going to cost in 20 years or 18 when they were born. And it's easy math to get it from this to that, but
sometimes it's hard to put that money away
it
when
is.
you're a young person or young
it is.
parent. Yeah.
And it's the beauty of time value of money. The earlier you start, the easier it is to do.
Yeah.
It's not that it's easier said than done, but setting those boundaries and setting those goals.
Yeah.
But going back to your point, you had some phobia about it. You got over it though. The sooner you teach your kids that, hey, don't be afraid of it. Let's look at it. Let's see what that money is. The power of compounding.
When my kid discovered interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
We opened up the savings account and then their letter came and said, you earned this much interest. She was like, what?
It's the eighth wonder of the world. Compounding interest.
What is interest?
Ask Albert Einstein. I mean, it's fabulous. It's empowering to a lot of people. Wow, I can get money on my money. That's actually happening again now. The phenomenon in the finance world right now is that interest rates are high. It could be good or bad. If you're a
Depends on
borrower,
what-
it's bad.
Yeah.
If you're a saver, it's great. So now we're saying, wow, 5% on my money. Now that's starting to add up. 5% 1 year and 5%. Now it's compounding. We hadn't seen that for over 10, 15 years. Rates were so low. So
That's one good thing, I guess, for
yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So needs and wants.
Yeah,
I feel like we could very easily judge people for what they consider as a need and we might consider as a want. So that coffee budget might be high and you might be like, what the?
Right.
But the value, the quality of life stuff, like
Priorities.
how do we allow ourselves some of those wants? So the funny story at my house is years and years ago, this only happened once because he learned his lesson. My husband bought an Xbox without telling me he was going to buy an Xbox. And that was like pricey in the day.
Yeah.
And I flipped out.
Yeah.
I was like, you what?
Yeah.
You know, But then again, when I went to buy something that I didn't tell him about, he flipped out, right? And so then we had this agreement. Okay, well, anytime it's over X, we talk about it first, right?
I love that. You should say that one more. Repeat that, because that's the same thing that I do with my my wife.
Anytime we're going to spend more than whatever X,
All your listeners out there,
Yeah.
that's a good
Well, let's
thing
talk about it
for young
first.
couples.
Yeah.
Hey, my money, your money. But if it's going to be above this limit, set it together. We need to talk about it with each other. That could save a lot of
Arguments.
You bet. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
So, what are some other ways to think about needs and wants and saving
Well,
versus spending?
Yeah, I'll try to give you maybe a humorous story. I think it's humorous, but so I get my hair cut every month, as a lot of men do. Happy I still have some to cut. So there's a lovely young lady that cuts my hair, and it's usually different because I just go to Great Clips. It's a great, I can get in and out of there. And so I was getting my hair cut, and the young lady said, "Hey, Jim, look, I just got this brand new tattoo." And she's cutting my hair and said, "Oh, it's right here. Oh, it's lovely." And I'm like, "I don't have any tattoos, but I don't know what that costs or if it hurts." I said, "Hey, I really, really like that." And she was really proud of it. I did ask her, "How much did that tattoo cost?" And I was floored. It was $400. I'm like, wow. So I thought for a second. I said, "You know what? Next time you think about that too," I said, "say no to the tattoo and yes to the Roth IRA." And she's like, "Roth IRA?" And she's like, "Who's this old guy telling me what to do?" But she goes, "Oh, Roth IRA. I've heard of that." And then I explained. And she's in her mid-20s. I explained that this is a retirement vehicle named after the Congressman William Roth.
Oh, I wondered why.
It's named after somebody who came up with this wonderful idea that allows you to put money into an account and it grows tax-free forever. Tax-free forever. It's a Roth IRA. There's limits and so forth. So you're young. I don't remember her name. You're young. A Roth IRA would be awesome. So no to the tattoo, yes to the Roth IRA. So the story concludes with this. I went in the next month. She was not there. I went in the next month. She was there. And she was with another customer. She goes, Jim, I opened up a Roth IRA. You're so proud of me." So I was really happy about that. But the power of, hey, she wanted the tattoo, but have the empowerment of saving for her retirement. And young people have an amazing opportunity that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
The time value of money. Think about tax-free forever. The younger you are, the more powerful that is. And so I encourage all young people, Roth IRA. So maybe skip the latest iPhone, skip the $5 Starbucks, whatever you have to set. Either it's going to be $500 or $1,000. You can do up to, I think, $7,000. Put it into a Roth IRA. Your future self will be so happy. So you got to prioritize.
Is that something you can start small and then add to? I'm just thinking, like, when we were early married, like when we started, my husband, we had the 401ks and stuff like that. We couldn't put a lot in, but we put what we could.
Yes,
and,
always put.
And then we just kind of built on it every year. And
so
you don't have to have a huge chunk right away.
No, everyone can start off small.
Yeah.
Everything starts off small. Smaller salary, smaller savings, but eventually when you cover all your basics, like your car, your phone, rent and all that, you got to cover all that, and then the excess has to go in the savings. And believe it or not, it's the life magic of your earnings will exceed your needs, and you will have a reserve. You have to have it. It's the key to life. And, you make this and you spend this. This is the key to life. Whether it's low here, this is what you make, this is what you spend, and eventually here, you've got to have that gap. That's the magic of money. You spend less than you make. And, starting off small, it's always going to be whatever reserve, save it. And the beauty of time value of money is incredible. So I love the Roth IRA because it's tax-free forever. But I also believe in auto savings too, by the way, and this is for
That's
any
another
kid.
easy way to do
Yeah,
it.
I mean, Warren Buffett says it. I mean, you pay yourself first and then spend the rest. It can work. It really can. So pay yourself first.
So
The
just an
Roth
auto, like take it out and put it in a.
auto everything, auto retirement, auto savings, auto, hey, like the old Christmas club. You save $100 a month in December. You got $1,200, and that's your Christmas budget. The layaway thing, it still works. Those old concepts. Auto, have main checking account where things go, and then auto into a couple things. You won't miss it. You
Yeah.
will not miss it. Pay yourself first. I can't. Whether you're 15 or 55, it
Yeah.
still works. It
So
does.
we've had a friend of ours on a few times, Rachel Dursey, who's a financial wellness coach.
Ah,
And she's fantastic. And she talks
great.
about budgeting and spreadsheets and And
Okay.
she said, you should really just plan for all the things that come up. And she said, each month put a little bit of money away. Thinking about the birthday gifts you have to give people, right? Put a little bit of money away every month for that so that it's not going to hurt you on a certain month. Same with Christmas. Same with if you have a vacation you would like to go on. Or, is there a home maintenance fund you need to be paying into? And she talks about the same thing, having little separate accounts and just making sure you're putting that away each month. I love the idea of planning ahead for your Christmas budget. And I've told the story a million times about my grandmother, racking up her Montgomery Ward's credit card at Christmas time every year.
Oh my
and resenting
gosh.
everyone for
Montgomery
it.
Ward's, there's the blast from the
Right,
past.
right, yeah.
But just to piggyback on that, Heather, anything there's 3 buckets, and whether you have 100,000 or 100 million, I still talk about this every day. It's the short-term money, the intermediate, and the long-term, and you should be funding all 3. So the short-term would be, hey, the next year, what am I going to need? The birthday gifts, the Christmas, the little reserves and
rent,
peace of mind.
yeah,
All of
that
that.
stuff.
The short-term money. The intermediate is, hey, I might need some money in the next 3, 5, and 10 years. And as young parents or parents that are planning for college, that's their intermediate. The kid's 5, that's 13 short years, or if the kid's 10, that's 8 short years till they enter college. So intermediate money has to be directed into that. Long term is the retirement. You mentioned 401k, and Roth is really the long term. That's the asset that's going to be the longest term asset. But just think of 3 buckets and fill those every month from your paycheck. But the 3 buckets have to be filled after the rent is paid, after the car is paid.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, this is the savings. Whether it's $100, you put a third, or it's after the basics are held.
okay.
Yeah, 3 buckets after.
Okay.
Short-term money. Hey, I'm going to spend that
Should
next
you do
year.
it equally? Or is there a percentage?
That's a great question.
Is it based on age?
Based on age, yeah. I would say based on age, but equally, because the longer term needs less money than the short term because you have the time to grow it. So if I'm saving for retirement, I could do a little bit less in there because I have more time.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be stacked a little bit more to the shorter, a little bit less to the intermediate, and a little bit less to the retirement. It really should be that way.
Okay.
People make that mistake all the time is when people retire, it's all in the retirement. They have no other reserves, no other buckets.
Okay.
The 3 buckets.
Interesting. 3 buckets.
Yeah. Short term, intermediate, and long term.
Okay. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about people who have kids that are facing college because mine definitely had this situation.
Yeah.
I had one kid who made their decision about college completely almost entirely about the finances because they didn't want to have huge student loans and they didn't want us to have to take out lots of plus loans and we had a little bit of savings but not as much as we should have, so there were some loans involved.
Sure.
And hilariously, my other kid picked, as you were describing earlier, one of the most prestigious art schools they could go to, which is super, super expensive. Now, we did have conversations about it because the value of that particular degree from that particular institution in the field they're going into will pay off
It's
in their lifetime earnings, right?
return on investment,
So
ROI.
there it's hurting in the now, but we know it's going to pay off. And the joke is 1 year of loans from my youngest kid equals total loans for my oldest kid.
Yeah. Wow.
And but they have different kinds of degrees and different value systems and stuff. So when we're talking with our kids as they're looking at schools, and they're deciding, do I want to take on all this debt or do I not? Like, how do we talk to kids about, they're 18 years old. Their brains are not fully formed yet, and they're asked to sign these loan agreements, binding them to this agreement to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. How do we help them navigate that, and how to decide which way to go?
Yeah, that's quite a subject you're bringing, considering that billions and trillions in student loans that may never get paid back. Bigger picture, a lot of the higher institutions encouraged a lot of kids who probably shouldn't even be going to college to go to school and take out the loans, and that led to huge inflation in tuition and all that. But going back to a practical sense is ROI is one way. Take the 4 years, divide it by, multiply it by the earnings power divided. So 4 years of this degree, what is the chance? What's the percentage chance of entering into the workplace, and what's the starting salary? Return on investment. Certain degrees are going to pay off. So the engineering degree from a very expensive school, the payback's going to be there. Or the art in some cases.
In some fields,
In
yes.
some fields. So talk about it. We're not going to school just to have an experience. Yes, we want a great experience. We want to learn about ourselves, make new friends, cultivate some more hobbies. But I think it's still, what is my value in this world, in my marketplace? I'm going to have a career and a job. What does it pay, and how likely will you be able to pay those loans back, or what's the return on investment? And the thing about that too now is there might be jobs in the future that the kids that are entering college, those jobs we won't even know if they exist. There'll be jobs. Remember you
websites?
said, I was
What's
just
a
going to say,
website?
you were a website designer. And I know that
Yeah.
sort of how you started on
Yeah.
this route of being a marketing agency owner, but no one knew what a website was when I went to college. No one knew what a website designer is. So with AI and, there might be some jobs that are eliminated. So it's still about the skill set. It's about the humanity of learning how to work with people, work in teams, and solve problems. So I'm just saying they've got to understand what the skill set is that is applicable to any job, and there's got to be payback. I definitely believe in some skin in the game. So some loan. You don't, I'm lucky because I have the means to pay for their school, but how do I get some skin in the game with them? I'm talking about that now. There's plenty of scholarship opportunities, co-ops, working while you're in school. It's gotta be a complete discussion and fully transparent. This is what's going to cost. This is what resources we have. Let's put it all together.
Yeah.
And it's gotta 18, the brain is not even halfway developed.
Right?
You're
Yeah.
so right with that.
Yeah.
They say a young woman, probably maybe 25, men 30.
40.
Yeah. Never. No. Have an open dialogue of
Yeah.
this is what college costs, how much are we going to contribute, what can you contribute, and what is the end game? Do you think you're employable? Will you have the skills? Will you get a job? And I'm really bullish about young people. Some people aren't my age. They're like, all these millennials and all these people don't know how to work. I'm super,
no, these
I
are
love
very-
young people. I love, people, 25, 30, 35 who have the right people skills and the right work ethic are going to do so well in the next generation.
I
There's
feel
so
like
much
they're
opportunity.
very hardworking generation, and they're also very community minded. So they're not only in it for themselves, they're in it for
The bigger picture,
bigger
the
picture,
greater good.
The greater good.
They're efficient too. So you're saying, yes, they want to be part of the greater good,
Yeah.
whether it's, the environment or
They're very
social,
entrepreneurial.
yeah,
They're
too.
very, yeah.
Very efficient. They grew up with tech. They know how to use it. And
Yeah.
it's not just to play games and do funny, TikToks. We're using tech, young generations using tech to save time, efficiency. And that's incredible. And that's what AI is going to do too.
Yeah.
The chat GBT. I want to talk to you about how that affects marketing and
That's a
creative.
whole,
I know.
I've
I've
got many thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna wind this up with a final question, because now my youngest graduated, and we're getting inundated with junk mail of start your credit history, build your credit with this 30% interest rate credit card. And I know that is a pitfall when people are leaving school, they don't have a lot of money yet, and they really get themselves in trouble. Any words of advice for people just starting out?
Say
Just say
yes to
no.
the Roth and no to the tattoo. No.
No to the credit card.
Yeah, no to the credit card. Having credit is important. It is. Establishing the credit. I mean, old school. It was the same thing back in college. Everyone got their credit card apps, and if you could fog a mirror, you could get one, and it's still the same. You like that?
That's a good one.
Yeah. So, just be careful. I feel like everyone should have some credit by the time they're in college or outside of college, because so having a credit card, having some established history of being able to borrow and then pay back, borrow and pay back, borrow and pay back, setting a limit, and then that builds a stepping stone for a credit history, which will allow for the purchase of the first house, which is really challenging. Or a car. I'm sorry, the car should come first.
Yeah.
Car loan, the credit card, establishing that, borrowing a little, paying it back, borrowing a little, paying it back, then a car loan, paying the car off. The car is not an investment, everybody. It's a expense. It depreciates as soon as you buy it. It's not an asset. It's a liability. But having a car, paying it off, driving it, maintaining it, and upgrading after that, and then the first house. You've got to have some credit established.
Yeah.
And having a credit card, maybe co-signing, so you can have some responsibility, some oversight with the teen or the young adult, and then eventually dropping off and letting them be the sole owner, signer of that credit. So maybe gently doing it as a joint, which just means that if they don't pay it back, guess who has to pay it back?
Yeah. But there are things like secured credit cards where you pay ahead of time, and it's basically your base. It's like a savings account, basically.
It's a savings
you're paying
account.
Yeah, but it's a way to build credit if you don't have credit, right?
Yeah.
And,
No, you can. Yeah. There's ways to do that.
You just have to be careful. Just really have to be careful.
Just be careful. Yeah.
As you said, there's a long list of questions. There's so many avenues we could go down talking about finances. This has been great, though. I think it's a good first conversation.
I'd love to continue it anytime you want, Heather.
But
love your podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell everyone about your amazing financial advisory firm and how people can find you.
Sure. So we're Elios Financial Group. We're an ensemble financial planning and investment firm in Westlake, and
In Ohio.
Here, Westlake, Ohio. Beautiful CLE on the North Shore of Ohio, on the shores of Lake Erie.
Yes.
Beautiful Lake Erie. We do a lot with people who want to be smart with the money. We're passionate advocates for smart money management. We do a lot of retirement planning. So a lot of people are retiring. When can I retire? The sooner the better, right? So do I have enough? If I have enough, how do I start taking money out? I know how old your listenership is, but people are so used to saving, and that's great. A lifetime of saving. There comes a point where you're gonna have to take out, and that's a transition.
How do I manage that part? Yeah.
And hey, wait a minute. I have to pay taxes on what I already saved all this? Wait a minute. Taxes after I retire? Yeah. So we do a lot of tax planning and figuring out how to efficiently take money out for a peace of mind retirement. So you can pursue all the things that you always dreamed about, whether it's having grandchildren and fostering great relationships with them, or relocating to sunny climes like Florida, whatever, or pursuing pickleball, whatever it is. you want to have peace of mind, and we provide that. That's what we do.
Great. People can find you at Elios.
Elios Financial, ELIOS Financial.com.
Okay.
It's the Greek word for the sun, as you recall.
Yes. It's a beautiful website, if I do say so myself.
It is. Thanks to you. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, Jim, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
Thank
We
you.
always have fun.
I
when
love
we
it.
talk.
I know. Please come back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we need to talk.
We need to
some
chat
more.
more, yeah.
You bet.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
really
you.
Fun.
That's a Hard No is a production of Clever Girl Marketing, my little agency in Cleveland, in partnership with our friends at Evergreen Podcasts. Many thanks to our amazing team, including Maura Del Rosario, our production and marketing coordinator, Noah Fouts, our amazing producer, editor, and composer who wrote our theme music and performed it with his band, The Big Leagues, and our new video producer and editor, Kay Holmberg. You can find show notes and resources on our website, and you can find other fun stuff on our socials. We're Hard No Podcast. Find your no, then say it with me.